getting out of your comfort zone, having the courage to go against norms and what's expected of you, becoming a mother at 41, cultural explorations, and coming full circle. My guest today left France for China and has never looked back since. She spoke about decisions she made in her life and how, because she dared to go against norms and what was expected of her, began to truly enjoy her journey as a coach, facilitator, university teacher, and entrepreneur of her own tea business. Hello and welcome to Season 5 of the Womenpreneur Asia podcast, and I'm your host, Krista Good. My mission is to uncover the stories and strategies of Asian women entrepreneurs in Asia to help you as you navigate your own business journey. This episode is brought to you by Redbox Studio. If you want to be kept updated on new episodes, join my email list that you can find on womenpreneurasia.com. Today's episode is with an entrepreneur who lives in China, Emilie Chung. I was introduced to Emilie by Daniel Yeo of Singapore, so here's a big thank you to you, Daniel, for this connection. Emilie Chung is the co-founder of Sinellia Tea, a business she started with her Colombian husband, whom she had met when they were both drinking tea in a bar in China. She's also with GNAC Consulting as its China office manager, and she teaches international business as a university teacher. Emilie grew up in France and moved to China when she was 30 years old, where she knew no one, and she started from scratch, building a life, career, business, and family. She said that the decisions in her life were tough to make, but helped her become who she is today, a business owner, a mother, wife, teacher, and coach. The small decisions paved way for the bigger ones. In this episode, we spoke about how she started a tea business and why she started the business, why China holds so much of magic for her, how she decided to become a mother at 41, making decisions, having a growth mindset, expectations of women, self-development, and happiness lessons. Let's get started. Hi, Emilie. Welcome to Womenpreneur Asia.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Krista. I'm really very honored to be invited to take part in your show.
So, Emilie, where are you now and where are you today?
So today I'm in Guangdong, which is a big city in South China, not too far from Shenzhen or Hong Kong, for those who know a bit more about those cities. And the weather is terrible. There's a kind of typhoon type weather. So the wind is blowing right in front of me. It's very dramatic.
And you are a participant in the drama today.
Yeah, my clothes almost flew off the balcony a few minutes ago. I had to go rescue them.
So, Emilie, let's get into your story. Why are you in China?
Well, that's a very good question. When I first traveled to China, it was in 2008 and it was just for touristic purposes. But as soon as I got here, I realized that I was going to live in China. I was born in France. And my mom is British, but my dad's family is from China. And I never had strong connection with my Chinese roots. And as soon as I arrived in China, I felt somehow at home. I felt that I belonged here, and people on the street would think I was Chinese, you know. They would speak to me in Chinese, and I felt, wow, I need to live here. And 2 years later, I moved to China in 2010.
And you have been in China ever since?
Yeah, I've been in China ever since. And the first purpose was to reconnect with my roots and learn a bit of Chinese. I didn't have a clear career path or kind of very ambitious idea of what I was going to do. But somehow, as we're going to talk about later, it all kind of fell into place. And that's what I like about the way it happened. Yeah.
And right now, I also know that you're a mother.
Yes, as you can see from the bags under my eyes.
And how has motherhood been for you?
It's been yet another journey, you know, a different kind of journey, an interior journey, and a challenging one at times. It's really getting out of my comfort zone, but it's wonderful too, and I'm very happy to have met and be the mother of my little Bastian, my son. So that's yet another adventure for me. Yeah.
So you have many adventures in China.
Yeah,
the one you
yeah.
had in 2010.
Actually, yeah, it's true. I just didn't imagine that all this would happen to me and how long it would take. And, I didn't plan anything that way. And I think that's the best part of it. And I think that's what I would kind of like people to remember about my story, is that sometimes the things that you don't plan are the things that you naturally tend towards, and those are the ones you should go for. Just seize the opportunities without trying to plan too far ahead, and see where they take you. And that's what I did.
Have you always been spontaneous in that way?
Well, no, because I had a Chinese dad who was very serious about my studies, and he wanted me to have a very clear career path, and also I graduated from quite a good university in France, which is called École Normale Supérieure, which is a school that kind of a lot of university teachers come out of. But it's very competitive to get in. Okay, so once you get out of that, I went to see the head of the school, and I was like, "What can I do with this degree?" And he was like, "You can be the head of a university department, or you can apply to enter the School of Administration. That is the one where all politicians in France go to, attend, and basically that's it." And I thought, wait, but what if I want to travel, or if I want to experience other kind of jobs? And he was like, no, that's what you're going to do. You're going to do either A or B, and you have a choice. You have A or B, and that's it. And I thought, no, I don't want to do A or B. I want to do something different. Because I was thinking, and I love teachers, and I have all respect for teachers, but I was thinking, what if I spent my whole life at school? Like I was at university to study, and then I'm going to spend my whole career at university, and I will never see how working for a company is like, or working for some other type of job is like, I don't know, an NGO, for example. So I wanted to see different things, and I didn't have that option. And it took me a lot of courage to go against what people expected from me. Like a lot of people said, but why are you going to give up your university teacher job? It's like a civil servant job, right? So it's very safe, and it's quite prestigious in France. And people were telling me that I shouldn't give it up, and I should just follow this kind of safe path. And I ended up giving it up, and giving up all the benefit of my exams, to get in there. In order to do something different. So, no, I wasn't spontaneous because people didn't let me be spontaneous. Oh, sorry, I think there's a phone ringing.
It's okay. Life happened.
I wasn't allowed to be spontaneous, and I had to learn how to become spontaneous, which doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does.
Would you say that you're better at it now?
Yeah, now I'm confident about my working skills, and I'm confident about my intuitions on what to choose as a job, for example, or as a project to work on. I know what I should do or not. So I don't need to think about it so much. I can feel it in my guts, and I tend to follow that. So now it's much easier. But when I was younger, I wish I had an older version of me who had told me some useful pieces of advice, so I would have torn my hair out for weeks, trying to make decisions on what job to take, what internship to do. It would have been much easier for me.
Let's start from there. You left your university teaching degree. You didn't want to take that job.
No.
And what happened after that?
I started working for a consulting company. I wanted to work for the public sector because I had this kind of public service mindset still in me. But I discovered during an internship there was some consulting jobs that are private consultants who go and help the public sector, And I thought, that's interesting. It's a kind of bridge between the private sector and the public sector. So I thought I can try that. But somehow I had this mindset that the private sector was very evil and this kind of corporate greed and all that. And I thought I'm not going to enjoy it. And actually, I enjoyed it a lot. which is, once again, get out of your comfort zone, do something you don't think you might enjoy, and actually maybe you will. I really liked that job because each different project, you have to adapt to different clients. You're never working with the same people, so you don't get bored. And each time you enter a completely different universe, like let's say you work for a ministry that is doing a reorganization in their services, and you have to understand how everything works. And you're thrown in there and you don't have a lot of time to understand it. So you have to adapt quickly. And you have to be good at interpersonal relationships, because people tend to not trust you at first. You're from the private sector and they're public sector. So they're like, who is this person coming to teach us how to work? You have to be good at that. You have to be good at a lot of different things. And I really like the versatility of that job for that reason. And I loved it. So I never got bored. And each new project would last between maybe 4 or 5 months and a year. And each time it was a new challenge, new people, so you don't get so embedded in the politics of a department or of a team, which is also something I hate. So you always have the outsider perspective, which is really cool, because then you can tell people truths that they would not necessarily hear from their own teams. That's really good, So you don't have to be like, I have to be nice with the CFO, I have to be nice with the HR, because no, you don't need to be nice with anyone, actually. You're there to maybe actually not be so nice and show them some ugly truth that they wouldn't like to see. And that's your job, actually. That's your role.
I think it's easier, right? I think it's easier for you to say that from an external perspective.
Actually, exactly. And that's why usually consulting projects don't last more than 1 year, because otherwise you get too involved with the team, and then there's people you like, people you don't like, people you get on well with, and then it becomes complicated again. So then they tend to move you to another project, which I think is healthy somehow.
Yeah. And then from there, you decided to hop on a plane and get to China.
What happened is that I loved my job, but I didn't like the rhythm of it. I mean, I was young at the time. I was 25, 26. And you know how they tend to exploit young consultants' eagerness to do stuff. So they're like, can you do this PPT for tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. and you have to work on it the whole night. And you're like, yeah, of course I'm going to do it.
Because you're young, you're energetic.
Yes, and I want to, make the project work, and I want to please my boss and everything. And I got a burnout after 5 years working in that position. I really was burnt out, and I discovered China 2 years before, in 2008, when I was traveling, and I thought, okay, this is the moment for me to go and explore another part of my life that I don't know, which is my Chinese roots. And for example, my name is Chung, which is actually Zhong, which means like bell, or clock. 钟表的钟. And I didn't even know what my name meant. I had no idea, because my father didn't learn Chinese as a child, so I didn't learn Chinese as a child. So I knew nothing about my culture. And I felt, okay, now is the moment to devote to that. And at that time, I was 30. I had a boyfriend, but we weren't sure where we were going at that time, right? But everyone said, why are you leaving your settled life? You have a job, you have a boyfriend, you have your friends and family here in France. Why would you go and, travel to a place you've never been to, or just once, and where you don't know anyone, and start all over again? That doesn't make sense. So once again, I had to kind of overcome another hurdle of people telling me what I shouldn't do or what I should do. And I remember both times it was the same. It was really hard for me to make the decision, but once I made it, I never regretted it. But it was really hard, to overcome.
But how do you make... So now I'm interested in this part, right? You talked about decision making twice in your life. So now I'm really interested. How did you make your decision? Because I think decision making is something that all of us struggle with. Not just you when you're making a big decision, but everyone. I'm particularly
bad at it. You can ask my husband. He will be like, especially for important things like that have an emotional aspect to them, And those two first times I had to make these really life-changing decisions, I struggled. It took me weeks, if not months, But I think, as I'm also a certified coach, and I found out that one of my main values is courage, and I really can relate to that. And I think that somewhere in my upbringing or in my personality, I have this courage to overcome things. And I just didn't want to be like all those people who want to do something and don't do it and become bitter and jealous about other people and just kind of grumbling about their lives forever. And something in me was like, no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be like those people. And I think that courage helped me make the decision. But there was a lot of list making, pros and cons. And what I did was that I always had a safety net. So, for example, when I moved to China, what I did is I took a sabbatical year off of my job as a consultant, which is quite easy because you usually work on projects and then you move to another project. So you're quite interchangeable in your position. You're not in a specific role for years. So that was easy to negotiate. So I knew that if ever I didn't like it in China or I wanted to come back after 1 year, I could easily do that. And then I extended it to another year. And then after 2 years, my boss called me and said, "You're not coming back, are you?" And I said, "No, actually, I don't think I am." And then I resigned. But you see, I needed that kind of safety net of, if I come back, I have a job and everything is kind of organized for me to do so. So I'm spontaneous and adventurous, but I think that part of me that is more reasonable was also playing a bit in there, and I needed that reassurance too.
So it means that you still have your safety harness.
Exactly. So I think you don't have to be a complete daredevil and drop everything and go to the other side of the world without thinking it through. You can also like create some safety nets for yourself to be more confident about what you're doing. And I think that's a good way of trying, like step by step, without doing something too crazy, but just a little bit out of your comfort zone. But yeah, I have something to fall back on if ever it doesn't work.
And you mentioned just now that you're a certified coach.
Yes.
So let's get into that a little bit. Was that when you were in China?
Yeah, and actually, I followed a training in Hong Kong that is validated by the International Coach Federation, and that was another journey. What was wonderful was that I always was attracted to the world of coaching, but as a consultant, so for those who don't know what the difference is, a consultant is someone who has an expertise in something and who will give advice to his or her client based on that expertise, right? So, I don't know, reorganizing something or defining a strategy for a company or helping teams communicate better. All that can be part of a consulting project. But then a coach is someone who helps an individual or a team become a better version of themselves, but without telling them how to do. It's more a kind of type of questioning and suggesting, and I'm here to mirror a little bit what my customer feels. And I'm not there to say you are right or wrong. Okay, so whereas the consulting is more directive, somehow I can say my experience as a consultant taught me this and this and that. So I think that you can apply that in your company. As a coach, I would say, what options do you think are valid for you to move forward? You see? So it's completely different, but very complementary. So I had a few consultant colleagues who were also coaches and who kind of brought me into that world. And what is fantastic is that it's a personal journey. When you take the training to become a coach, you have to learn to stop giving advice. You have to learn to stop judging and putting your thoughts in the conversation. And you have to step back and just listen. And that's really hard at first because you keep on wanting to interrupt and be like, "Oh, I have a great idea for you. I think you should do this." But you should never, as a coach, you should never say you should do something. If you are a coach who follows the International Coach Federation standards, of course, yeah. And so I use it as a complement in some consulting projects. For example, I could have a project with a team, and then I will coach the leader of this team because he feels that he needs to communicate better with his team members.
So it seems that you come from the consultant world, and then you're now a coach. And what else? I'm sure there's this other thing we're going to talk about, your business. Let's talk about your business.
That we're quite proud about, and that involves my husband, actually. So I'm also a university teacher, so I did keep teaching as one of my jobs. However, something we are quite proud of is our tea business. So we are the proud co-founders of a little brand called Sinellia Tea. And it's really a passion project. It's not something that pays the bills or anything at this point, to be honest. But it came from a passion that was also a very spontaneous thing. I remember when we started living in China and we met. Actually, when we met, we were both in a bar with a thermos of tea. Okay, which is quite unusual, and we both looked at each other like, oh, hey, and we both realized that we don't really drink, but alcohol is not our thing. But so when I used to go out in the evenings, especially in winter or when the weather was not so good, I would drink tea, and he also does that, and that was one of our first conversations together, which is kind of interesting. And then when we were really together and it developed into something, we talked about this tea thing, and we thought that there's a lot of times in China where you go to a supplier, factory, or to a restaurant and you drink tea, and it's not that good, to be honest. It's not fantastic. And we were thinking, where are all these famous teas in China that they talk about that are so world famous? Where can we find them? And we thought, maybe it's not the teas, it's us. We don't know enough about tea to be able to find the right teas. So why don't we just take a few lessons, a bit like wine tasting or something. So we started looking for a place to learn about tea. And my husband, he's a very picky person, like he wants the best. And we looked in several tea classes, and the one that we found that we really liked was the Guangdong Tea Association organization, which is like the province tea association. Like each province has one. Okay, and when we turned up there, I don't think they'd ever seen any Westerners before who wanted to learn about tea, maybe one or two, and our level in Chinese was not good, and they really thought that we would never stick around. They were like, no, but you won't understand anything, don't they? And we were very determined to take classes. And the more we learned, the more interesting it became. And then we just kind of like, it's a rabbit hole, you kind of get pulled in. And we started making a lot of Chinese tea friends who are people that I find very interesting because usually they like Chinese traditional culture, history, calligraphy, flower arrangement, so kind of music. So it kind of opened up a whole world that we hadn't explored a lot before in Guangzhou, because Guangzhou is a city that is really turned towards business. Like people who come to Guangzhou are people who want to visit factories and do business and go to markets and buy products. And so it's hard to find those people who are really attached to the culture, right? And we found them, and then we were like, this is really interesting. We need to get into it more. And we started studying, and we haven't stopped. We've been studying since 2014, basically. And now it's become a brand, like after a few years, our friends started asking us, how to choose good tea, how to this, how to that. And I have skills as a facilitator, like doing workshops, or as a consultant doing workshops. And then we have this knowledge about tea. So we started making workshops for our foreign friends in order for them to understand better what Chinese tea is. And then it became a whole thing where we would do it once a month or twice a month. And then we decided to create a brand around it. And it's been going very slowly, it's developing step by step. The idea is not to rush it and make millions. It's to keep our passion project going. Of course, now with a baby, it's a bit more difficult at the moment, but it's still going. Like since Bastien is born, we've already organized 2 workshops, I think. and we're going to do a third one. So, we can still keep it going. And it's really interesting. It's so interesting. And Chinese people really appreciate that we are kind of so interested in their culture. And for us, it's been a great way to learn more Chinese, like to improve our level in Chinese, which is now much better than it used to be. So my advice, if you want to learn a language, is learn it by doing something else that you really like to do, using that language. It's much easier. Then you're not just looking at the grammar books, you're actually engaged in something, and then learning the language becomes a kind of obligation you can't do without it, and then you just go and learn it,
And when you started that business of yours, that brand, Sinellia Tea, is it?
Yeah.
How do you have to market it, or did everyone just come from the association or friends of friends?
We didn't do a lot of marketing. We just did a little bit locally. There's a few expat associations. There's one called Global Friendship in Guangdong, and we organized some events and then we promoted them through that. Or there's the French association called Canton Accueil, which is kind of like for all French people coming to live in Guangzhou. So we organized a few workshops and promoted them through these expat associations. But surprisingly, we also had some Chinese people coming to join our workshops, believe it or not. And the more involved we got, the more we also serve Chinese people, and some people tell us that they trust us more somehow because we came to learn about this, and we don't really of course we are happy when people buy our tea, but we're not kind of focused on the money thing. So some Chinese friends buy tea from us, which is kind of funny, but it works. I guess if I was in France and I saw a Chinese person super passionate about wine, maybe I would trust him to buy wine, because I guess he would have made all these efforts to learn about it. So yeah, why not?
And speaking about tea, what's the most popular one that you're selling?
The thing, that's a bit of a trick question, because often the most popular teas are the ones that people know of, right? So if you tell people what kind of Chinese tea do you like, they'll say, Longjin green tea, because that's the only tea they've heard of, because it's one of the most famous ones in China, yeah, or pu'er, but they don't even really know what it is, but they've heard about it. So, and then what we want them to do is to try different teas, because there's a lot of teas that they don't know that they might love, but they don't know that they will love them yet. So what you have to do is first you have to educate people to what is the difference between a green tea, a dark tea, a red tea, because a lot of people don't know that, how many tea categories there are, what kind of profile of flavors and aromas they like. So that we do through tastings, and then we encourage people to describe the teas. By describing, they refine their palates. It's a bit like when you're a child, the therapists always say, encourage children to describe their emotions, and then they understand their emotions better. It's the same with your palate. If you describe the sensations you have or the flavors, then you will identify them better, or a perfume maker does that too. So we encourage them to do that. And then once people know what kind of flavor or aroma profiles they like, then we can suggest other teas that they might like to them, and in hot brew or cold brew. And what we do is I spend a lot of time communicating with the people who buy tea to help them prepare it the right way. Like what kind of utensils you have at home. When are you drinking your tea? Are you drinking it before a workout? Then maybe you can try a cold brew in the morning. I spend a lot of time on that, because a lot of people sell tea, especially to foreigners, and then the foreigner is there with a bag of leaves and they don't know how to prepare it. They don't know what to do with it, so they prepare it properly in the wrong way, and then it doesn't really taste good, and they never try it again. And that's not what we want. We want people to understand what is a good tea and to buy good teas, whether it's ours or someone else's, but not the tea bag that you find in the supermarket. Because there's a lot of also environmental implications in that we believe in. So the more people understand, the more they will buy better quality teas. It's a bit like coffee that has been through all this kind of process of being better understood. Now tea is starting to follow the same process, but it's still very slow, and people still don't know a lot about tea.
So what's that number one myth about tea that you like to debunk?
That's a very good question. The first thing I'd like to debunk about tea, it's the first thing is that it contains less caffeine than coffee. That doesn't mean anything, because first it depends on what coffee you're talking about, a big cup, a small cup. Same with the tea. How much leaves you put per amount of water, how strong you brew it, how long you leave it in the water, right? So that doesn't mean anything. So that whole thing of tea has less caffeine is not necessarily true. It depends what kind, depends how strong you've brewed it. And the second myth I would say probably is that the darker teas are stronger than the greener teas. Okay, a lot of people think, I'm just gonna drink a light green tea and it will be less strong. But actually, the teas that with the leaves that are less processed are greener, and usually so they have more of all the nutrients, all the components in them. So usually green teas have slightly more caffeine than more processed teas that look darker. So it kind of is very counterintuitive. You might think, a tea with a very dark leaf is very strong, but actually no. And the third myth is tea is not like a detox miracle product that makes you lose weight. Yeah, but a lot of people are like, what is the tea that makes you lose weight? And we keep on telling them that doesn't work like that. It's like water makes you lose weight. You know, if you drink only water and you don't drink soda and you don't eat 10 hamburgers per day, probably you will lose weight. But it's not, the water in itself isn't a magical thing that makes you lose weight. And if you've eaten McDonald's for 2 months and you drink water, it's going to be fine. No, it's part of a healthy diet to have tea without sugar, but it's not a miracle product. And a lot of people are hoping for that. So that's a myth I would like to debunk about tea. Yes.
What about yourself? What is your favorite
tea? I love oolong teas. Oolong teas are mostly grown in Fujian province in China and in Taiwan. And I love the range of flavors that they have. You have some green oolongs that are very floral and vegetal, and some baked oolongs that are almost like coffee. And they have these crazy aromas like flowers or fruits, but nothing is added, you know? So I really like oolongs very much. I'd say those are my favorite. But when we started, we preferred red teas, and it's kind of a taste that we developed with time, with knowledge, with understanding what a tea is. You know, so it's interesting to see that your palate changes as you learn more of how to appreciate the tea that you are drinking. Yeah.
What is, to you, your best marketing strategy so far for marketing your tea?
The best is to have a solid customer base that is very loyal. Like usually the customers we have who are the first time customers, they stay with us for a long time and they buy our teas regularly and they recommend us. And also having a good customer service, like after-sale customer service, how to prepare the tea. Do you have any problems? Do you need any tips? I think that's the best advice I could give.
Yeah. And you're also on Instagram?
We have an Instagram, Sinellia Tea _tea. But I don't know if I can write it down somewhere or...
Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes.
Great.
Yeah. Now let's get a little bit back to you, since we talked about you, your early years in France, and then how you ended up in China, and now you're not only you started a family in China, you also started a tea business in China.
Yeah.
So what about yourself? What have you learned about yourself all these years, throughout all these journeys? Professional journey,
I've learned,
or really physical journey?
I've learned that sometimes you have to improvise. For example, now.
Hi. So for those who are listening, I'm actually looking at Emilie's baby, and he's awake. And
he's awake and he wants to drink some. I'm gonna feed him while I answer your question. You know, and
okay. So this is real life, right? This is motherhood.
It's real life, exactly. And you have to improvise, you have to adapt. For me, I think that's the most important lesson is when life throws you a curveball, you have to kind of take it and do something good with it. You cannot just be like complaining or just go with the flow. For example, now I could be stressed and be like, oh no, what am I gonna do? But no, I'm just gonna
feed your baby.
Yeah, because it's important. But then I have this interview, which is also important, so I'm gonna do both. It's fine, That's it. And the more stressed you are about it, the more complicated it gets. But actually, if you are not stressed about it, it works. You find a solution. I think that's what life has taught me in China, especially in China, where sometimes you seem to be faced with a big wall of no, a big wall of this is not possible, you cannot do this. And you have to kind of keep going, but try this way, try that way, keep going. Not get discouraged, not believe people who tell you things are not possible. And there's so many opportunities in this country to do stuff. Especially when we arrived, it was just kind of a land of opportunities. Now with the COVID and everything, it's become a bit more complicated all over the world, right? But at the time when we arrived here, was just so many opportunities to seize, and you just try and say yes to one of them and see where it takes you, and that's it. I know it sounds simple and too simplistic maybe, but actually I believe that that's the recipe to have an interesting career, because I can say that on my CV I have a lot of different aspects which maybe are not consistent, maybe don't make sense, but it makes my profile more interesting, Ooh, baby. Are you okay?
Yeah, it certainly is, because you have had a lot of life experiences in that way.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes having 2 or 3 skills that are completely different, that may seem conflicting, is a plus. Like there will be a company looking for your type of profile and struggling to find someone like that, and then you will be that person. So I'm not worried about but your career path doesn't make sense, or why didn't you do this or that. I just kind of I continuously try to develop my skills. I've like every year I try to do a training in something. I try to keep learning about something. That's the only thing I kind of impose upon myself. But it's not an imposition. It's fun. I love learning. I love learning about new things. I love developing my mind. So it's great. It's a luxury I have, I think. Maybe.
And since we have your baby with us, let's talk about motherhood. I think that would be an interesting topic to talk about too. Because I think we mentioned this, right? About you being a mom. Did you ever want to be a mother? And how did that happen?
It was interesting because when I was growing up, I kind of grew up with the normal social assumption that yes, I will be a mother. But I always thought I will have a child later in life. That was for sure. And then the later I got, and the less I felt that I wanted to start a family at this point. I was happy in my career and in my life, and I didn't feel I was missing anything. But then I hit the 40s, and I thought, okay, it's now or never. It's and sadly, women have an expiration date for giving birth and producing children, not for the rest. Our brains still work very well, thank you. But then we decided to give it a try, and I got pregnant. And then it was really scary. I realized that my life was going to change a lot, and I suddenly questioned the whole thing. And I thought, wait a second, maybe I don't need to have a child to be happy. And it was a very tough decision to make, because I was already pregnant, and it's hard you have hormones and you don't know how you're feeling half of the time. And I had to make this other life-changing decision. And And I really thought about it a lot, and I realized there's a lot of pressure on women to have children. There's a lot of assumptions that when you will get married and when you will have children, as if it's not an if, which men maybe don't have as much, even though I do believe men can have that kind of pressure. But I think for women, it's if you don't have children, people tend to look at you with pity or with, I don't know, a feeling of like, oh, maybe you're not a completely fulfilled person or completely
abnormal.
Yeah, or are you abnormal? Or, which I find is really not fair because now that I'm a parent, I can say I love my son. The parenthood is not for everyone. It's hard. It's not easy, and maybe some people will be happier not being parents, and why not? And it's not as if the world wasn't populated enough, also. So why not let people free to make that choice for themselves instead of putting pressure on them? I mean, I remember when I was 38 or something, some local AIs, some local older women in my residence looking at me saying like, oh, you should hurry up, you should have children, and I was thinking like, first, we don't know each other, never talked to me before, and secondly, I don't think they would tell a man that kind of thing in the same way, So why put so much pressure on people? And now that we have one, it's like, oh, and what about the second one? And I'm thinking, what is all this pressure? Like, are people jealous because we have a free life and they want us to, I don't know, to have a lot of children, so we're not as free? I don't know. I mean, it's a huge responsibility to have a child, and I'm very happy that we decided to have Bastien. I'm super, very delighted to be his mom. But I do believe it's a choice that should be the parents' choice or the non-parents' choice, to make. And I don't like that society puts so much pressure on women to be moms. I think it's not fair. I think some women will be happy with children, some women will be happy without children, and I'm pretty sure if I hadn't been pregnant, if I couldn't conceive, for example, I would be happy too. I would find ways to be happy, because when you have a growth mindset, you will always find ways to improve yourself and to be happy, whatever the circumstances. So it doesn't matter basically what choice you make it, you embrace it somehow,
Yeah, but
I don't know
for people who don't know what it is, could you define that, the growth mindset versus
the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset? That's a coaching principle. Growth mindset is the belief that you can always learn something new, and that you can change your own way of thinking by learning something. And the fixed mindset would be things like, oh, I'm too old to learn this, or I'm too whatever to do this. I'm too shy to dance in front of a million people, or so you're putting kind of mental barriers, and you're trying to stay in your comfort zone. A growth mindset is a mindset where you are ready to get out of your comfort zone to learn something new, because you have a belief that it will bring something additional to your life that you don't have, and that it will make you happier. And it really does, actually. It really does. It really works. So I always try and teach my students the growth mindset. Like, don't put barriers to yourself. Because when I meet them, I often ask them what age they think I am. I mean, now I look older because I'm just tired. I haven't slept. But in the past few years, I looked younger than my age. So when my students learned that I was 40 or something, they would be like, no, that's not possible. How did you do? Oh, my God. And I would say, I just do the things I like to do. I don't put barriers to myself. I don't dress like people say a 40-year-old person should dress. I don't stay at home. I go out. If I want to learn something, I learn it. And I told them, don't put pressure on yourself to do things in a certain way. If you want to learn to play guitar when you're 52, learn to play guitar when you're 52. It's possible. Your brain works. As long as your brain is functional and you can walk and talk, you can do basically anything. So, And I think it's important for them to remember that, because in a lot of traditional cultures, there's a lot of kind of expectations of especially how women should behave or how they should dress or what they should do at a certain age. And also, I don't agree with that. And I'm sure you are aligned with what I'm saying, Krista.
Definitely. Because a lot of times we see a lot of, living in Asia, right? We do immerse ourselves in all these different societal pressures that come at us. And what are you no longer afraid of?
I'm no longer afraid of what people will say about me, but I haven't really didn't happen to me, but even less now, like what they think my life path is, or I really don't care about that. That really doesn't bother me at all. And I'm no longer afraid of what my parents think I should be, because actually now they trust me. I mean, I had quite a conflictual relationship with my dad when I was a teenager and when I was growing up, because he was like, you should do this and you should have a high-paying job. And now he realized that I'm doing fine. And he told me, I think when I was 25, actually, I trust you. I trust your judgment. I see that you always kind of end up falling back on your feet and doing something good. So now I trust you. And I was like, well, at last. But now we have a good relationship, and so I'm not afraid of their judgment. And I think it's very liberating not to, because you're already judging yourself a lot. If you're a bit perfectionist or you want to do things well, you don't need to start thinking about what other people are going to say about you. Otherwise, it's never ending. You just don't do anything, right? So I think it's important to get rid of that, but it requires some work on yourself. I also would like to remind people that there are doctors for the body, and there are also doctors for the brain. So if you're not feeling good, if you're feeling down, if you have doubts, if you're feeling depressed, there's no shame in going to see a therapist. I had to go and see one several times in my life, and it really helped me. I had to overcome some lack of confidence, some self-doubt, a lot of things that a lot of people have to overcome, and sometimes you need to see a therapist, and that's fine, So yeah, I would encourage people to try it. It's actually an interesting exercise, and I always learn something from it.
And what's the craziest thing you've ever done?
Craziest thing I've ever done was to go and work in a refugee camp for 3 months in Thailand. To marry you. Yeah. My husband said, I thought it was to marry me. Yeah, that's one of the...
Perhaps, so, yeah, marry my... that is its own story.
And so marry my husband is the first one. And the second one is indeed, I went to work in a refugee camp on the border of Thailand and Myanmar to help Burmese refugees in 2014. And I was 3 months in this refugee camp with 20,000 refugees, and the camp was 7 hours away from any city in the jungle, and it was the most beautiful human experience I ever had. So I came back really changed from it, and I'm still in touch with some of my former students. So I was there teaching English, but so much more than that, just helping people and just learning from them, because they are remarkable people. So I think I learned more from them than I taught them. And, like everyone was like, but you're crazy, it's not safe. What are you going to, And I went and I did it, and it was fantastic. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Probably I'll take my son to do it one day.
That sounds fantastic. I would have thought you would say things like, perhaps, some adventure you had in China.
Well, in China, so many times, just like traveling in China is a whole crazy thing in itself. Sometimes you just have to flag a random person down to bring you somewhere. You have to find ways to find a train ticket. You can't, and then you end up on an unofficial bus somewhere in the middle of the countryside, going from one place to another. all the adventures that happened in China before smartphones. Now it's pretty easy living in China. You have Didi, which is like Uber in China. You have WeChat, where you can pay. You can, But when I arrived in China, there was no smartphone, so there was no maps. There was no Didis, so no taxi, no nothing. You had to manage by yourself, And those were crazy times. Like we did some pretty crazy things, just traveling around and just trying to figure out how to get from one place to another. It was a bit of a challenge. And it taught me how to communicate with body language, how to, try and persuade people if you don't speak their language to do something for you. Like, how do you do that?
And how's your language now? Your Chinese?
我觉得现在我的中文还可以吧。Chinese is okay， 是不是？安妮，你觉得我的中文怎么样？还可以，不错。
Great validation.
Then Annie said, not bad. Yeah, 不错。So now I can have conversational Chinese and anything related to tea, I'm good. So anything related to tea, like fermentation, oxidation, the kill green process, all these kind of technical terms related to tea, we can speak in Chinese, no problem. For more like technical terms in other industries, I'm not that good. But I can hold a whole conversation in Chinese for a few hours, I guess. So, yeah.
And what personal goal are you currently most focused on?
Right now, my personal goal is to re-establish a balance in my life. I'm on maternity leave, so I've been very focused on Bastien until now, and it's been great. And I want to keep being focused on him, but at the same time, to be able to start doing more of the things I used to do, learning, training myself, doing consulting projects in the future, and I need to find a balance, how to organize my time, how to make that happen. And for the moment, it's difficult because he's still very young. So that's a personal goal that I have that I really want to work on. And the other personal goal, but it's more of a family-oriented goal, is I really want to travel back to France by next Chinese New Year, so I can introduce him to my family, and then also travel to wherever my husband's family is going to be, to introduce him to his family, because for us, family is really important. So yeah, how to make that happen with COVID still hanging around China and all the restrictions we have, it's a whole adventure again that's going to unravel.
And where is your husband's family at present?
So my husband is Colombian, so his family is in Colombia, and he has a sister who lives in Australia. So how are we going to make all this happen? I don't know, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
And what about business goals?
Business-wise, of course, we want Sinellia to develop, to thrive. We're just finishing updating the website, and my husband spent a lot of time on it, and it should be ready soon, right? Yes, very soon, with all our new teas and everything. And that just took us a long time because we were doing that just as our son was born, so it took a long time to make that happen, and to be more present on social media to promote our teas and to promote not only our teas as product but also tea knowledge, which is what we really believe in, tea education. So I think if you had to find a kind of a common line in everything I do, I feel there's a lot to do with education and self-learning, self-development in everything I do. And because that's what I'm passionate about, actually. So
I can see that very clearly. Even as you were speaking, I was thinking, this woman is really all about learning and teaching and coaching.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting, and it makes life so enjoyable, because I see a lot of people who are constantly looking for entertainment in life. Like, oh, I'm bored, I don't have anything to do. And I'm thinking, how can you be bored and have nothing to do in our time and age, with access to the internet and so many things to learn online for free? And I don't know, if you're lining up in a shop to buy something, you can look at your phone and learn something. You can follow an online class. You can learn a language. There's so many apps that you can use. I mean, it's almost like information overload out there. And when learning is a passion, you're never bored. You're always discovering something new to learn about. So then life is always quite interesting. And I think...
I do agree.
It's not...
I don't understand how people can say that I'm bored when today we have much, much more than we had before. Like you can go online, do stuff online. You can go offline and do stuff offline.
Which shows once again that it's a mindset. It's not the reality. It's a mindset. It's a growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Once again, we go back to that. You know.
And so for people who say that they have nothing to do, well, they probably need to learn more. Learn something that they like.
Yeah, they need to learn how to be interested in stuff, actually.
To be curious.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to learn how to be curious if you haven't had the opportunity to do that as a child, maybe. So I don't want to judge, maybe they just haven't been brought up that way. But I really want our son to be brought up to be curious and to be interested in everything and follow his own path. Also, I don't want to push him to study this or that, but just to be curious in general, and then he will find his own interests, and then he will be happier in life. Because when you're passionate about something, you're definitely happier in life.
Finally, where can people find you online?
As a person, Emilie Chung, you can find me on LinkedIn for any professional contact. I do a lot of consulting projects online now. COVID has allowed that to happen, and it works. So if you need a consultant online to help you with strategy or other topics related to your company, you can contact me through LinkedIn. For our tea business, you can check out Sinellia Tea on Instagram, and our website sinelliatea.com, which I think Krista, you will share. That is being updated, but it will be available very, very soon to buy our teas. But since it's not yet available, if you really want to buy teas already, you can contact us directly through Instagram, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. And we also have a Sinellia Tea account on WeChat, but that's for China. So I think maybe I won't share that one. I'll share the Instagram one rather.
Thank you, Emilie. It has been a wonderful hour talking to you, and
thanks.
And having a good time learning about your various adventures, various journeys, and how you ended up back in the country that, well, you're really connected to.
Yeah, and now in touch with my family in China again, which is really cool, No. Yeah. So yeah, there's a loop there, as you saw yourself. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm so glad we connected. I'm so glad you shared your story, and you're very, also very upfront and honest about things in life. So I really enjoyed that, because sometimes it's very hard to get that perspective, and people are, like you say, people are so pressured to not share or to share, but they don't want to share too much.
Yeah. No, I think you have to be honest about this, because otherwise people get a wrong idea about life. And for example, having a child or being a mother, like you can't sugarcoat it. Otherwise people have expectations, and then they get depressed when it doesn't happen that way. So no. So I think you have to be honest about your life. And my baby is crying now.
Okay, that signals the end of our interview together. So thank you so much, Emilie. Really look forward to following up with you on your Instagram as well as on your website, and looking at all the wonderful tea knowledge that you'll be sharing there, or you're already sharing there.
And thanks, Krista, for having me. And I really appreciate what you do and your own kind of trajectory as a woman in Asia. And I encourage everyone to follow what Krista is doing and to listen to the podcast. And there's a lot of other very interesting people out there that she's interviewing. So yeah, I will go and listen to more of your podcasts, actually.
Never had I thought that a baby will make a cameo in my podcast, but here's a shout out to baby Bastian, the first baby to be captured on Womenpreneur Asia. And if you heard suckling noises, yes, baby Bastian was being nursed by Emilie when we were recording this episode. As I said, life happens, and I loved how Emilie adapts every single step of the way. She spoke about having safety nets when making tough decisions, and I couldn't agree more. While we want to be adventurous and take big leaps, we need to ensure we have some form of safety nets for those just-in-case moments. If you have enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, or subscribe to Womenpreneur Asia. It definitely helps the podcast reach out to more men and women interested in learning from Asian women entrepreneurs in Asia. I hope you had some aha moments with this episode, and I'll see you next week.